So we are recording actually. Hello there, people. Welcome everybody to episode 11 now of Xclude podcast. Today I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'm not going to talk about DJing. I'm not going to talk about producing. I'm not going to talk about promotions. I'm not going to talk about techno. Well, maybe we'll get to that. This is going to be something different. The guest I have to my right is a cyclist. I'm a cyclist as well. Cycling to me in general is going to be basically a lifelong thing. It's going to be with me till I die, for better or for worse. And I wanted to explore cycling because it's just as niche to a degree as DJing and or producing and or making music to a degree, especially for the music that I'd like to sing. I mean, especially for the music that I'd like to listen to, that being techno and house and all those electronic kind of genres and drum and bass, whatever. But I got my road bike, I got my mountain bike, and I know people in this community here in Mid-Atlantic, so I figured to do an interview with my guest, Rebecca Joy Lewandowski. I figured to interview her. She's pretty big in the scene, the strongest woman that I happen to know, and she's still going strong, more stronger than me. But that's yeah. I just figured to put it out there. It's I had to say it. But yeah, Rebecca, welcome to the podcast. And another thing too, before I start off, I'm working with a new setup. I'm working with a Zoom H4n Pro, so if the audio is kind of like a little bit muddled, sorry. This is literally my very first time using this setup. It's a very lightweight setup. It's me not using the DJ controller that I have to lug around everywhere. So just giving y'all a heads up as far as audio is concerned. If it sounds like crap, sorry, but at least we're making the podcast happen. Anyway, Rebecca, thank you for having some time allotted for this. This is kind of a departure from me, but that's a good thing.
Thanks for including me.
Yeah, no problem. It's part of the thing. It's part of the deal. Include with Xclude. It's kind of ironic.
Full circle.
Right? But anyway, I did some, like I do with the majority of my guests here. I do a little bit of research beforehand, going through like Facebook and like Instagram and all these other kind of sources. Just try to dig up a little bit of dirt about you. We both like dirt.
Of course.
Yeah. Where did you? Simple stuff. Let's go. Where did you grow up?
Well, grew up in South Jersey, although I feel like my roots are in Philly through and through, because that's where my family came to. That's where they ended up after Ellis Island. That's where the whole magic is happening in Philly for me. But still, parental wisdom ended up in some South Jersey school systems growing up, and I still have a little bit of that Jersey girl in me. So
Gotcha, that's fine. I got some buddies who are in Jersey just as well. I lived in Philly for a period of time, about a year or so, and I was in South Philly, nearby Oregon Avenue.
Okay.
And had a good time there.
Yeah,
I wish I'm thinking about moving back there, but right now, since I have work here and everything else, it's gonna have to be for right now. I'm gonna have to settle down here at least for a little bit. But I do want to eventually move out and maybe go towards like somewhere like, I don't know, like somewhere near the PA border. Like I'm not too far away from Philly, and closer from Philly, but I'm not too far away from work just as well.
Heck yeah, and in terms of some people that grew up in South Philly and never left, you're a world traveler now.
Yeah, and so are you. Are you a world traveler?
I am a world traveler.
Yeah, I am as well. Since we're talking about that, where have you been to?
Oh. Well, when I was 17, I guess I branched out the most, and again, parental wisdom, they sent us abroad, so I did a little tour of Europe. Hit, the popular spots like Great Britain, France, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, little Italy. Been back in 2008 to Italy, and most recently Kuwait. So I've been in some unusual areas.
Gotcha, that's fine. I've been to Amsterdam, Germany, and London. All primarily like Europe, like Central Europe, give or take. But maybe if I have the chance, maybe go to Prague. I've always heard about that, and like how like clean everything is, and like they have they do have a musical background, which is kind of like why I've kind of decided upon maybe going there.
Mm-hmm.
Because like all the places that thus far I've been to kind of are like related to music in some way. Because like when you open like some kind of guidebook or anything else, it's like they tell you like places of interest, food,
Yeah.
kind of touristy stuff, but
Mhm.
they don't really discuss about the music
Yeah.
all that often. So you really that's something kind of have to find.
Mhm.
And if you have enough time, you can explore that. But if you only have, I don't know, a week, you may miss it.
Uh-huh.
So it's just like a matter of finding the right sources and going to that place and
Mhm.
exploring the music scene from there. And that's why I've kind of like always tailored my traveling choices by kind of the music.
Yeah, well, the
Yeah,
good
that's how
thing
music-
is with your parallel passions of cycling and music, you can double your options, and no matter where you end up,
I
you
have
can-
too,
you can end up
I have
with
too
something
many
great.
fucking hobbies. I have too many passions. I have cycling. I have photography. I got the fucking podcast. I got I was into golf at one point, and that didn't really turn out.
Well, you're not going to be disappointed wherever you go, pretty much, it seems.
I guess it's just a matter of can I devote X amount of time and not feel bad. I guess.
Right?
And also money just as well. But how did you pick up cycling? How did you pick that up
Mhm.
among all the other kind of like sports you've grown to come about?
So, I'm actually relatively new to cycling.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Um,
I'm new to DJing. I'm only
yeah.
like 3 years in. I've known guys to do it for
Right.
20 years.
I cram a lot in. I tend to be very intense and fully, I'm all in when I decide on something. But I bought my first mountain bike in 2015. And it was, in terms of what I'm used to now, probably not really capable of handling the trails that I took it on. But I remember going to a store in Philly saying, hey, I want to ride on this trail. What will work? And I'm pretty sure they just kind of set me up with something that's like, well, we don't want to, make this person spend too much money if they don't even know they're going to like mountain biking. But after coming off of a back injury, I was, I had been ultra running for a while, so I had done some ultra marathons, and I was a marathoner, and, when you hurt your back, it's a lot harder to do that. So I figured I can't sit still. Let me buy a bike and see where that leads me, and it led me to going all in on mountain biking. I don't even sign up for nearly as many running races as I used to. If I do, I'm not going in there from a competitive standpoint. Now I'm just all about cycling.
Gotcha. Let me just test one thing on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to test that out. I just had to test out the controller. Don't worry, it's technical stuff. But ultra marathoning, I'm not a runner. Well, I should say this. I know how to run. I just decide not to because I'm always afraid of my knees.
Yeah.
I've always thought that was an issue, so that's why I picked up cycling. And
Yeah.
I was I'm into cars just as well,
Mhm.
so that in some kind of aspect, cars lends itself to cycling, being
Mhm.
that something kind of mechanical.
Yeah.
Yes, it may not be as technologically advanced with I don't know, automatic cruise control versus like I don't know, SRAM axis shifting,
Yeah,
or like
yeah.
Di2, but
Mm-hmm.
it has wheels.
It makes a lot of sense, and in a lot of the same ways, it's a lot of like mods, like modifications, specifications, like different things you can do to enhance, mechanical performance and output. Like bikes and cars, I feel like are pretty closely related, especially if you're going to talk about racing. And I mean, there's really no ceiling on how much money you can spend. That's certainly something
Yeah, for
we
sure.
have
I
in
mean,
common.
I worked at beforehand. I worked at Performance Bicycle before they closed their doors.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked at both the Philly location as well as the one here in Newark.
Mm-hmm.
And there would be some definitely parallels between cycling and anything kind of automotive, and you could spend just as much money, working on like I don't know, 10 grand or 15 grand bike.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like to a degree working on the car. It may not be as like precise.
Mm-hmm.
You're working with like an Allen key versus like a torque wrench. Well, you're working with an Allen key versus an impact gun.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of a difference, but it's kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved my time there, and I wish I could do it again, but I feel like the money kind of quite isn't there. I mean, we went bankrupt
Yeah,
like,
that's tough.
like fuck.
That makes it tough.
It's like fuck. It's like
Yeah.
as cool as it is, as cool as the hobby is, I had to transfer my skills like elsewhere, and now I'm into welding and all that other shit.
Mhm.
It's not as cool, but it's more functional
Mhm.
versus like it's more function. It's more critical versus just working on the bike.
There's a higher demand.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and that's kind of sad. I feel too, because with my shit, it's like, oh, you see all these big buildings and stuff like that.
Mhm.
That was because of you. You welded that up. You welded that structure up in order for it to rise, and now it's part of this community that's like being like gentrified or something like that. So it's kind of you're playing a bigger part
Mhm.
instead of like you just like on your bike and just having a good time.
Mhm.
It's more complicated. It's not as simple.
Yeah, and for cycling, for the majority of us, cycling is a hobby, whereas
Right.
where you live or
Right.
where you work is more of a necessity
Right.
in life.
As opposed to like Amsterdam, where it's like they ride their bikes everywhere. Like they take their kids on their bikes, and these what's the word on these like 3-wheel bikes, these cargo bikes that
Mhm.
they take their kids on cargo bikes in the rain,
Mhm.
like just getting to work, like that's like a life kind of thing. So it's like the bike is more dependent.
Mhm. And I
Right.
so wish it was like that here, but at the same time, one of the thoughts I have, like laying in my bed this morning, is just thinking about if I'm gonna die, what's the most risky thing I do? And it's probably riding my bike on the road.
Same.
If I'm gonna die, I'll probably get taken out by a car, and I don't want to subject kids to that. So that's probably why it's not like that.
See, I got hit by a car, but it was my fault.
Oh wow.
So you see, okay, so I used to work at New York Toyota, right?
Mhm.
And they had just repaved their driveways. It's like the
Mhm.
whole lot was like this super smooth asphalt.
Mhm.
And I would ride my bike from home to work. And that was about like, I don't know, like an 8-mile commute.
Uh-huh.
And so you would double that, coming back. And so it was like round trip 16. But right before I would get into work, like right before I would clock in, I would
Mhm.
do like 3 laps, like around the, the
Like a
freshly
crit?
paved, kind of sort of like a one-man crit. Because it's smooth, it was fast. Every pedal stroke was like transferred to the ground. So I was
Yeah.
like, just go, just do a
It's
quick
that
3
new
laps.
asphalt.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It makes you faster. And I had my cycle computer at the time. I was looking, okay, like 15. Okay, I push this like to 18, easy. Just darting around corners and shit. So I did that for like, I don't know, 2-3 months. Until one day, I come around the corner. I didn't see him coming. The janitor's Ford Mustang.
Not the janitor.
He was cool. No, he was cool. He was cool though. I saw him coming. Well, I didn't see him coming around the corner. I hit him.
Oh no.
But damaged his windshield bad. My bike flew in the air.
Wait, you hit him.
I hit him. Well, we both
You collided.
we both kind of collided.
I said that about my Jeep in a city bus once. We collided.
We met on accident.
Yes.
So I had to pay for his windshield, and my bike flew in the air and hit 2 other brand new RAV4s.
Oh
Now,
no.
thankfully, those vehicles were covered under the dealership's insurance policy, so they were covered. That was fine.
Well, what happened to you?
I had to go to the hospital. They just checked me out.
Uh-huh.
Thankfully, I had my helmet on.
Thank God.
I was cool. I was fine.
Uh-huh.
I think I actually worked the same day. I forget. It was a little while ago.
Did you win the crit though?
Of course I did. But I paid for it. My bike was totaled. It was a Fuji Cross, and it was like,
Ooh.
it went from a medium to like extra small.
Oh no.
So it was like dinged up in like 3 places. So I had to get a new bike, which is a good and a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. Did you sell the other one on Craigslist?
No, I have it. I still have the frame on top of my bookshelf in my room. And
Oh,
just
it's
like,
so small it's a bookend now.
yeah, well, yeah, I guess you could say it's a memento. I'm thinking of like whenever I go to like let's say a race or something, I just bring it out just like for motivation and just
Mhm.
like using it as kind of like a bell.
Like to wear your helmet or like before prom, they put the messed up cars out so that you know not to drink and drive. Maybe before a race, you should put the bike out to like wear your helmet.
Oh,
you
okay.
know?
Yep. There you go. That's something to do. I'm thinking I'm kind of debating on what to do with it right now. It's just sitting in my room, just collecting dust at the moment. But it's like whenever I go on a road ride or anything like that, or whenever I have a down day for whatever the reason, I look at that frame and I'm like, fuck, it could be worse.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Strong philosophy. I keep a picture like that. That's my shit could be worse day kind of picture where when things aren't right, you just look at that. You're like, okay, well, today's actually not that bad.
Right. In comparison to what was.
Exactly.
Now, what do you consider your local trail? Like around here, do you often go to Fair Hill or White Clay?
Definitely Fair Hill.
Okay. For me, my trail is Iron Hill. I don't live too far away, like 2 miles away. So that's like my home turf, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, well, Iron Hill has had the construction lately, so it's been kind of, not really rideable right now. So how are you dealing with that?
No, I was just there the other day.
Okay.
And looks to be fine.
Good.
And I think I have seen the construction vehicles still around there. But they're like hit and miss. Some days you see them, some days you're not. So I feel it's rideable, but granted, I haven't. I don't often go there as often as I used to. So I'm just kind of like taking it here and there, like in like a quick ride, like a quick 8 miles or something like that. Just go in and out, and don't really take a long ride there. Of course, you can't really. It's not like White Clay.
It's not, but what most locals really like that trail because it's kind of a more technical option around here. So they've got rocks and. BK does a local ride there, here and there. So, but, Fair Hill, while it's my home trails, it's not as technical as I like. I love rocks. I'll eat rocks for breakfast. Iron Hill gives a little bit of that, which is why I liked it. But same, like most people don't end up going out there unless that race happens, that Middle-End
That's the only,
race.
Yeah, and it got canceled for this year.
And it got canceled because of the construction, so everybody's missing that Iron Hill.
Yep, and as much as like Iron Hill, everybody seems to like White Clay because it's smooth and it's fast and it's
yeah, but
bigger.
There's some drawbacks. It's more crowded and with people that aren't necessarily as mountain bike friendly. So you have that trade off. If you want to rip lines, you have to make sure you're not going to run into Karen as you're flying around the corner walking her dog, or Fred that has his headphones on. So it's kind of a trade off.
Right, and speaking of Fred who has his headphones on. I get annoyed at that shit. Like whenever somebody like is on their headphones and it's like they're jogging, they're running, and you're like right on their ass.
Yeah.
Kind of sort. It's just like you ring your bell, ding 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 ding. It's like could you like acknowledge me at least for a little bit?
Exactly.
Maybe have one like headphone on or whatever.
Yeah, and I've definitely had some negative experiences with that. I think I was on a women's group ride once and. Was actually cursed out by somebody that I think
get the fuck out of here.
We must have startled him. He was walking in the same direction we were riding, and we tried to give alarm, but we go by, and he just starts dropping the F-bomb, and there's nothing you can really do about it. So we get by, and then we just kind of laugh and whatever. That's we're on a women's ride, but also running. I've had that happen. In a race, it particularly bothers me because I feel like you need to be on point when you're racing. And granted, this was a running race, and you try to come around people, and you're, behind on your left. And if they don't hear you at some point, I'm just like, all right, motherfucker, I'm just going to.
Right. Is it kind of that same etiquette running and cycling? It's like on your left. Kind of sort of the person on downhill.
It is. If there's somebody faster behind you, they have nothing to gain by blocking the trail. But at the same time, sometimes it comes down to race design. If there are multiple distances and you end up feeding back in behind a slower group, and sometimes they just get annoyed that people keep passing them. And I understand frustrations, especially in a race if you're throwing down and not really fully sugar-minded enough to be like enthusiastic. Sometimes you just need some Sour Patch Kids or something to
Maybe
bring
the
you out
8th
of
mile,
that.
it's just like, oh man, it just drains them.
Yeah, exactly.
And you
So
can't really focus. You just really focus on like
you
finishing.
can't predict or recognize always when someone else is in a super dark moment. So, you can only control your own race and what's going on. And,
What's with the Sour Patch Kids? Is that like your kind of like pre-race ritual or something like that?
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. I don't even know if I need it. It's like, it could be placebo effect. It's just
there could be no sugar at all.
It could be high fructose corn syrup. I don't really read the label, so I'm pretty sure it's bad for me. If anything, I have a background in microbiology and biochemistry, so I think a little bit about how these things affect me, and I know that my brain likes sugar, so even if I'm feeling tired in the morning, I can kind of explain that this is helping me wake up even if I don't feel like racing. My mind is awake now, and it might not help me at all for the actual performance part of it, but I'm just kind of happier having my Sour Patch Kids at the start, and I have my favorite flavors, and it's just something stupid to take my mind off of any race anxiety that could be happening.
My favorite one is orange.
Orange.
Do they have blue? Is blue a thing?
Blue
or was it a thing?
A more recent thing. Yeah,
colors.
it's like Fruit Loops. They start adding colors. Yeah, they have blue. It's just more recent.
Oh, okay. It's a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, back in the day when my little sisters and I were like digging through the Sour Patch Kids for our favorite colors, there was no blue, but now it's a thing.
Was there anything before Sour Patch Kids that like, oh, I gotta have Reese's Pieces. I gotta have some M&Ms beforehand or some shit.
Oh, I have plenty of things.
Okay. You're okay. So you work for the government. You work for the army.
I do.
Describe that. Have you describe that? Like, have you served? Have you do you work as some kind of liaison or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How does that work out?
Yeah. So that's actually how I ended up down in this Mid-Atlantic area here in Elkton. I got a job. So after I graduated grad school, I got a job on Aberdeen Proving Ground for the Army, and I figured, let me move somewhere where there's a trail system, and that's how I ended up here. So I drew my radius, and here I am. Now I drive down to Aberdeen Proving Ground every day for work, and my official position is as a microbiologist, and it's a deployable position. So I staff a mobile expeditionary lab. So we have this lab that we can fly anywhere, drive anywhere, line haul, and it's been deployed nationally and internationally. And we currently have a lab in Kuwait that is helping identify and recognize if weapons of mass destruction are being used in a chemical or biological sense. So we're looking for chemical weapons of mass destruction and biological weapons of mass destruction. And I am personally responsible for helping ID whether or not there's biowarfare going on downrange. And I most recently spent 6 months deployed in Kuwait, where our lab is currently set up, just serving our country there and trying to protect the soldiers downrange and everybody back home.
That's some serious shit. I was just gonna mention your time in Kuwait there. How did that come out? Was there kind of a class of cultures? How did that work out? And also as well, did you kind of see any kind of action as far as letting your job description actually out in the field, or was it just primarily, hey, I'm just out in the lab, just in a lab coat, I guess, doing my own thing?
Mm-hmm. Well, we were positioned strategically where we had the most stable lab operating atmosphere. So the further downrange you get, the less you can rely on things like security, a power source, things that you don't really think about on day-to-day
normal
basis.
Shit, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So in order to have the highest level of capabilities, we stayed where it was safer, which was I was thankful for that. That being said, the Middle East is very different. The culture is very different. even on base, it's very different. I think one of the things I joked in my head to myself was, man, I really miss American sexism. Because it's just so different there. Like, I really do love this country especially after seeing how things operate in other countries. But in terms of day-to-day life, it's, it was 72-hour weeks. It was constant monitoring, and you were constantly on. And the thing is, when you're working that much, you don't have as much time to invest in or to like offload the stress that you always walk around with. So, you have 12 hours on, you have 12 hours off. How many hours of that is sleep? And then you don't have a bike. You don't have, like, you're limited by music. Like, there's, whatever you can find. And everybody's got this slightly higher level of stress, but everybody is trying to understand that we're all in this together. So, we'll say, like, Sally freaks out at work one day, but it's just the norm because it's just so tense, and it's everything. You're just completely out of sorts there.
I was just gonna mention, like, did you have any kind of like way to just to relieve stress? I was gonna say, like, could you bring the bike, or did you have some kind of, like, I don't know, like a basketball court even, like, or did you have some place to go to just kind of like unwind, like even for a little bit?
I will credit, like, the Army tries really hard to make sure those things exist. So they have like things like the USO that bring in outside entertainment. I think we actually had the Baltimore Ravens cheerleaders come through during Super Bowl when I was there. But, like, for people like me, I'm not really super psyched about that. But they have a variety. So there were marathons that they would do 5Ks and marathons. And I didn't have a bike, but I could run. So I think I ended up doing 2 marathons a month apart there, back to back, just because there was nothing else to do. And at least by having a training plan, you could tick off a week. Like, okay, like, I don't want to tick off day to day because that just is it's too slow. But ticking off week to week, and, like, just to go back to the reference in terms of having, like, a picture that you look at or a bike frame that's mangled that you look at where you're like, shit could be worse. I actually had so I lived in a shipping container that was really small and dirty, but I had a mural hanging in there that was covered in bright flowers that just said shit could be worse. And that's what I woke up looking at every morning. And it's true, because even though it was an uncomfortable living condition, shit could have been worse.
Okay, so you brought me back as soon as you brought up shipping container. I've always thought about living in a shipping container. Because I don't really, if I ever had enough money to have, like, a custom house, or even, like, enough money to actually afford a real house. I've been thinking about, like it's kind of these crazy ideas as far as, like, living quarters is concerned, because like in Philadelphia, it's like real estate's kind of varied, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I always thought, like, having, like, a shipping container house.
Like the whole tiny house concept.
Well, having, like,
it's all the rage right now.
Yes, it's very fashionable. But like having, like, a shipping container house, like stacking, like, or having, like, 3 shipping containers, like, kind of like welded together. So it's kind of like it's like a trailer kind of sort of like a double row trailer or something like that, like that kind of amenity, and like sticking it like in like some like near the Delaware, or something like that, and just have like that kind of like a home, like a party spot. And like it's like, if you're invited, like, you come party with me. It's like, like with those big ass parties. I've always thought about doing that. But how is it living in a shipping container? Is it kind of like as like hollow as it is, or is it just something? Was it kind of cool for a little bit?
I think it really depends where the shipping container is. So
was it hot in there?
I mean, when I was there, I was lucky. I was there in the winter, so the highest, highest temp was probably like 100. But yeah, it got like, if I wanted to cook food, I could leave it in there during the day. Like
but the eggs would be ready without gas or
like
electricity.
That sort of thing. But also, it's super dusty, so I had to put duct tape on the vents. And also, I did have an air conditioning unit like connected to the shipping container, which was really helpful. I was thankful for that. But there was a cat population there that decided that they wanted to pee on the air conditioner.
Oh, no.
So it was like that's what I mean. It really depends where you park the shipping container, which is why I think if you choose the tiny house route, you should have something with wheels. Like van life might be where you want to be.
Oh, God. That was a question for later, but I'm going to bring it up now. Is that you and Levi's van parked outside?
That's
the Sprinter.
That's Levi's van parked outside.
How I've always, along with shipping containers, how is it living in a van? Because that's becoming popular just as well online with like the pro downhill circuit, or like pro riders like living in vans and just kind of living like nomadically to a degree. How is that shit?
Well, I feel
At
like
least for a little bit.
I mean, if Levi wants to come over and comment on that, that's totally up to him. But my limited experience about living in a van is that if you really, space is limited, obviously.
Right.
It helps if you have somebody else that can drive with you and you can trade off. I still won't, even though it's equipped, I still won't pee in the van because I think that's weird.
I would imagine having a nice shower is a kind of a challenge. I love doing laundry. You know?
Well, I mean, laundry, that I think like you would need a really big van for that. But
right. Just gotta find a river.
Being okay with who you're in the van with is probably the biggest thing. Like, you don't want to be in a van with somebody that you hate because then you're just gonna get even more annoyed.
I understand. It's like being at Firefly for 4 days in a trailer with a bunch of your buddies. And like the first day is great. Like, oh man, we gotta see Zed. Okay, man, I got some weed, man. Okay, we'll smoke that, and then we'll have something to drink and we'll go see Zed. Okay, cool. But then by the fourth day, it's just like, fuck. It's thunderstorms, and it's all muddy, and there's mosquitoes, and yet you want to see dead mouse. And that's like a fucking struggle by the fourth day. And it's like, by the time everything's all said and done, you don't want to see anybody in that fucking trailer for like a year.
Yeah, at that time you're like, I just want to be out of the van.
Yeah, I just want to be done with this shit.
Yeah, but I've been lucky enough in my experiences that I actually still look forward to being in the van at night, especially if it's raining. Like, you got to, you streamline your process, and you nail things down, and eventually, if like you're with a partner in crime that like is like-minded and likes to be efficient.
Okay, so
you just nail down your process.
If I was in the van now, could I like stretch out? Could I be like, if I'm just coming back from a ride, like if I wanted to lay down, like is there enough room in that van to be like, like as I were on the couch like now,
yeah, you
kind of
could
sort of?
like do the worm in there, break dance if you want.
A word. Okay.
Yeah, you
That's
could.
right.
Like, you just have to like modulate the right way, like put things
coordinate
in a certain spot.
stuff.
Yeah, you
Okay.
could, and like at the same time, you could be cooking dinner on the stove.
Right.
Yeah, with like two people up front, like fist pumping.
Mm-hmm. Is it is it a gas? Is it diesel? Is it gas?
I have no idea.
Is the van? I'm talking to Lee right now. Is the van gas powered or is it diesel? It's gas powered. Okay, just want to get the confirmation. Okay, no, that's
Everybody's inquisitive about the van.
cool. Van life.
Van
Yeah,
life.
exactly.
Like, I didn't even know it was like so many people come up. Like, even when just putting gas in the van, people come up and ask questions and want to look inside. It's
I would ask before I would look. It's not the van's obviously not for sale, so it's just like.
I mean, that's not necessarily true, but.
Well, I would ask before I like look around and shit, because I feel like I'm like invading your property, kind of, sort of.
I mean, really, it depends where you're from, whether or not people think that that's the necessary protocol. Some people will just get up all in your business and like poke inside. It really depends. I've seen a spectrum. It has been a learning experience for me. Levi's amused.
Let's see. Entertainment. Okay, as far as entertainment, when you were in Kuwait, you mentioned that. It brings me back to Props Megatour. Ever heard about that?
No.
Okay, so Props is a very much into BMX. Props is it used to be like 411 for skateboarding.
Okay.
It's like BMX culture recorded on DVD.
Okay.
And it's like they had a whole DVD series. It was on G4 back in the day. Basically it's like BMX TV.
Mhm.
It's kind of like seeing it's kind of like what Thrasher is for skateboarding.
Mhm.
It's like what Props is for BMX. And they did a BMX tour of Iraq, and I think it's on. You could buy it, the special. It's like a 1 hour special,
Mhm.
and they went to like all these different places and like had like these like BMX shows, like in like Kuwait, I think, as well as Iraq, and all these couple different places, like Afghanistan. These countries where it was kind of like war ridden,
Mhm.
and bringing the sport of BMX, whether it be flatland or vert or street, and
Mhm.
bringing that abroad and like showcasing people and or the troops and helping them out just
Mhm.
as well. And I've always thought that was something very, very cool. And I've always wondered if that's still kind of alive. But your outlet was ultra marathoning um, in that time and space. Um, my question to you is about that. Like, how was how was doing a marathon in Kuwait different from doing something like locally here, if there was any difference?
Yeah, there was definitely a difference. One thing, right around the time I got there was when all the Strava went down, that people were having their GPS alive and revealing the locations of bases down range. So, I mean, we have training for that.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Training for
So,
everything.
yeah. So, I mean, I was aware of the ability before all that went down to opt out of global maps. So I had mine turned off and still, like I used Strava while I was there, but I just had the awareness to not do Strava global maps. But at the
Was it
same time,
tempting if you could acquire a signal?
no, because I didn't want to share that information. Like they scare the shit out of us. We didn't like. You just have to not be aware in order to do that. But at the same time, you got to remember there are 18-year-olds there and they don't know any better and they don't know
Right.
to check their
Their phone.
accounts and exactly. So it's, that sort of thing. But in terms of difficulty, I mean, that's just one small thing. I was on one of the cushiest bases out there. Like, even though the scariest thing for me was having the shower curtain hit me while I was showering. Like, that was just nasty. But there was still a track where I was. So if I wanted to train on the track, then that was possible. But at the same time, Kuwait is top 10 in the country for having the poorest air quality. That was something I definitely felt when I got there. My mile time was a minute slower for no reason other than I guess the oxygen wasn't hitting the hemoglobin, not getting into my blood cells. But also, a huge thing that stood out was because I was working I had no days off. I was working 72-hour weeks, 12-hour days, Saturday, Sunday, holidays. I had no recovery. So training for a marathon, I was overworked, under-recovered, and just kind of burning the candle at both ends. So in terms of getting kind of a stress release, etc., it probably wasn't so much that, but luckily deployments only last 6, 9, 12 months. So you burn the candle at both ends until you have nothing left, or you just try and get through it, and then you get back and you take a year to recover. So it's like it is what it is. It's a luxury to be able to run a race out there. We're fortunate for the people that organized it, but I don't know if it's really the same in terms of what you would pursue or find reward in if you're at home and it's your hobby time and you're just, casually signing up for these events. It's very different. It's more like, this is helping me get through a really hard time, as opposed to, oh, this is an event that I want to try and do well in. So it ends up working out in the wash, however it serves a purpose.
Now, I would imagine from your time there, um, having seen possibly what goes on like overseas while you were deployed over there, um, did you during your time there, did you ever kind of like what I'm trying to say? Let me refer to my notes real quick.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't want to safety scan my phone. No, forget about that. Exit that. Um, like seeing what you've seen there, have you always kind of wanted to lend a hand, like towards like charitable causes, because of your time there, or was it even before that that you always wanted to kind of like lend a hand to some like bigger cause?
I think it was more the values I was raised with that lend my aspirations toward being helpful. Um, I ended up serving our country in that aspect because I guess I was pretty impressionable around the time September 11th happened. My mom kind of changed career routes and went from being a registered nurse to putting in a bid for a contract and ended up doing all the medical screenings for the mass hiring of air marshals that happened after that. And that's around the time I was aware enough to make decisions about where I wanted my career to lead me. And I thought, wow, the most amazing thing I could probably do is use my education to serve our country, which is kind of what ended me up where I am.
Um, First off, thank you for that. And did that kind of lend itself to rare disease cycling? You being part of that team?
Yeah, definitely. Once once I got into cycling, I knew nothing. I knew nothing about teams or
Right, coming from a solo
help
sport
or
of marathoning.
sponsors or shops or bikes. So, um, my good friend Jacqueline McClure, we
Shout
were,
out.
yeah, hell yeah, we were racing each other, and I didn't want to race her, and she didn't want to race me anymore because, oh my God, she's such a badass. So, she came up to me one day and was saying, "Hey, I think that why don't you try and ride for rare disease next year? I think I'm going to be doing it too." And with Lauren Festa, there are just a lot of strong women. Nikki Thiemann, I like. Oh my goodness, I would be honored to be on that team. And also, with my background in science, the importance of rare disease research. I that is definitely something I would want to raise awareness for because given the way things are set up in this capitalist society, rare diseases aren't really, if not a lot of people have a disease, it's not really profitable for a company to research it or try to generate cures for it. So it just, that would be unreal to not only ride with a bunch of badass women but to raise awareness for a cause that obviously needs awareness raised for it. So I figured it was no brainer.
Speaking of causes, Rebecca rides for water.
Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking about donating. But is there kind of because my birthday's around the corner? It's like September 18th. So I'm thinking about doing like some kind of charitable donation.
Happy early birthday.
Word, hey, thank you. But I'm thinking about maybe doing some kind of charitable donation. Could you explain Rebecca Rides for Water, how that came about, and how can anybody donate?
Yeah, well, so that actually came about because I watched. I have a really good friend, Maggie Gooderl.
Shout out.
Yeah, she's a strong ultra runner, and she just moved out to Durango from Philly, whole Philly area. She's been in the area for a while. Miss you. She last year raised money for an organization called Run for Water that's run by Greg Armstrong, and it's a really small 501c3 nonprofit. And Greg actually started it up when he was running a race and figured, well, I'll try and raise money. Water crisis came up, and that's what he targeted. And from there, the company kind of built itself. And they're not huge. They don't take on like gigantic endeavors, but they just try to chip away one small effort at a time based on, what funding they have. And they just want to inspire other people to try to make a difference too. So after Maggie did that, I saw, that was really inspiring. And this year, after Kuwait and everything, I feel like it was kind of selfish to just ride my bike for me. So I wanted to pick some way to give back. And I got Greg's information from Maggie, and after talking to him, I decided that I just wanted to, do what I can. I had no expectations in terms of how much I could raise. I know it takes, based on my Google efforts, I know it takes about $8,000 to build a well. But if I could raise as much money as possible, then at least that could help their efforts to solve the water crisis. So I spent this year just focusing on that in all the dark moments and all the races, Breck Epic or 100-miler in 100 degrees, just thinking like, I want to give up now. But there's also that fundraiser, I can pedal one more pedal stroke. People have to walk miles to get clean water in some parts of the world.
Right.
So I can do one more pedal stroke. I can, write up about my experience, and, maybe some others will help me too. And I've never raised as much money as I have for anything in coming like close to the end of the fundraising effort, I'm like over $4,000 now, which is
whoop, whoop.
like, I know, overwhelming. So thank everybody if you're listening this, if you supported me. But yeah, and I just heard back right now. They're doing some reconnaissance in October. There are 2 potential opportunities. There's a small community called Namwiwi in Uganda that has a well that collapsed. So right now their residents are completely without clean water, and they have to walk miles. And there's another potential place near Lake Victoria where there are 2,000 people using one well. So they're trying to build a rain system to alleviate the pressure from the use of that well, or potentially looking to drill again. And they'll make a decision, and those efforts will begin in December. So that's, everything I've gone towards is, in the planning process now, and I'm really excited to see what happens.
That's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
And clean water it's very, like, we take it for granted.
Of course.
Here in the States, but it's very much a very critical problem. I mean, it's water. I mean, water's fucking part of us. So we really have to recognize that's still a problem, along with our other problems that we happen to have in this world. Like I don't know, human trafficking and slavery. That's still among us.
Yeah.
So having clean water is very much critical, and in comparison to a single pedal stroke.
Yeah.
A single pedal stroke, in a, 100-mile race it seems easy in comparison to, walking and spending X amount of time just for like a gallon of water or so. So it's very much paramount that, that becomes recognized as well. And I thank you for your efforts. And hopefully whoever happens to be listening to this and can contribute, I'll throw a link to a charity link to Rebecca Rides Water. I'm going to throw that in the description. Just look at it below. If you have even a little bit to spare, think about contributing to a greater cause. And just go ahead and donate, I guess, wherever you can, and wherever's listening right now. And another thing too, I forgot to mention earlier on, now that I'm on kind of the 11th episode, I have a number in mind as far as like how many podcasts I want to do. I kind of want to hit that. But anyway, I guess like, share, subscribe, that whole thing. You're smart enough to realize what this whole social media is. If you like this episode, go ahead and like it. If you don't, I guess don't like it. But if you're listening right now, thank you for listening, and we'll just continue on with the podcast from there. I think that's enough said. But anyway, where have you traveled and explored? Where have you been to as far as, mountain biking is concerned? Even with marathoning, where has sport in general taken you?
I feel like that definitely drives where I go. I mean, I have days off of work. I'm going to spend them on
Right.
You
I mean,
know,
you
and
hear
actually-
now,
yeah.
because if you job, it's like, okay, I'm going to pick a trail spot, that
Mhm.
has all these networks and you just happen to be landed here. So, your career took you here, but you've
Mhm.
always wanted to kind of like be around trails and the forest in general, for
Mhm.
whatever, around dirt,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh heck yeah. I mean, I can quote myself as saying that Breckenridge is probably one of my favorite places in the world. It could be based on the memories that I have associated with it, but I mean, I haven't I haven't explored as many trail systems outside of the country as I have inside of the country. However, next year I'm looking to change that. So
I would think about going to Italy.
plans on deck.
Oh man, what's happening over there? What's it? What?
There's a
Megalanch?
yeah, there's a
Maybe was that? I don't
there's
know.
a stage race called Iron Bike that happens over there.
Iron Bike.
Iron Bike.
Sounds like
so
Iron Hill Race, but like a remix of that, but
I'm
it's
sure
not.
it'll be exactly the same.
It's gonna be just as rocky. You can get away with a hardtail.
Yeah, so that's, they open up their registration in December, so I can't say it's officially on deck, but there are plans being made to make that happen.
Have
for
you
next
ever
year.
packed up your Have you ever packed up your bike inside like a bike case?
Oh, yeah. Actually, the first time I learned how to take my bike apart was because I had to go to Leadville last year.
Mm.
And I had never packed up my bike, flown it before. I borrowed a bike box.
Was it just like fingers crossed? I hope the shit comes by at
It
TSA.
was totally fingers crossed. And I was surprised. I don't think I really worried about TSA as much as I worried about myself being able to get it back together.
Mhm.
So it got back together. And
I was like, oh no, I forgot my other pedal.
Exactly. I was more worried about things like, well, oh my gosh, if my rotor bends, then what am I going to
Right,
do?
I
Like,
understand.
what if I don't know how to fix that or I don't have the tool? But actually traveling with my bike has taught me a lot more about how to maintain it and be more confident about it. So that's, it was it came down to the line and I had to do it. And was the best thing for me.
I had to, when I was working at before, I had to pack up this guy's Pinarello Dogma.
Oh no.
And okay, so here, what I didn't realize from working until I worked at the bike shop, that there's actually fakes of like Pinarellos and like Cervelos.
Okay.
Like the higher end bikes, it's actually like fakes,
Mm-hmm.
like kind of like clones of like actual real frames.
I mean, as a woman, I feel like I've seen handbags like that, and they could probably do bike.
Yes, it's kind of like that. But I'll tell you what, those clones are like, they're really hard to tell from like the real deal shit. And yes, they would have like the real components, like real Dura-Ace
Mm-hmm.
or like the real, Shram Red.
Mm-hmm.
But like the frame was like questionable.
Mm-hmm.
Like if the bearings, like if the race didn't really fit flush with the bearings, it was
Mhm.
like kind of like, where'd you get this thing from?
Yeah.
It was kind of suspect, but we still had to put the shit together.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back to bike, bike cases and bike backpacking, all that stuff, bike travel, traveling with your bike. I had to bike up this guy's Pinarello, and looking at these guys' wheels, it was like carbon disc wheel set,
Mm-hmm.
and just looking at that wheel set, I was like, this shit's real. And I had to do it like as soon as he came in,
Mm-hmm.
because he was paying good money for it. He had to travel out the next day for a race
Mm-hmm.
overseas, and I wanted to do it, but at the same time, I didn't want to fucking do it because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, what if, and all this other shit. But I'm hoping he arrived with his bike overseas intact, as I'm sure he did. But I was like so nervous at the prospect of something going wrong and me potentially having to pay for it. But thankfully, kind of unthankfully, Performance is out of business now, so it's just like, okay, bon voyage.
So
We had a
have
good
you
time.
personally had to pay for it?
No, not at all, not at
I
all.
was gonna
Thankfully,
say.
it was just like a one-time deal, but it was like I was just like kind of like nervous.
Also, question:
Go.
did he tip you?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, he did.
'Cause that's a thing that I
thankfully.
feel like people.
No, it
forget-
is. It
people
is.
forget about that.
It is support your local bike shop.
Absolutely, and tip your bike mechanic.
Yes, and that was the thing too. Certainly, if I did a good job, People would tip me just as well, and thank you for people who were customers of mine. If you happen to still remember me amongst everything, I had a good time there, and I guess I wouldn't mind doing it again for the right price. But as right now, I just kind of taking it as like another hobby of mine, kind of sorta. But it's again, cycling is gonna be a lifelong thing, it's like till I die. So it's just gonna be like I might as well have a fucking tattoo of like a sprocket on my leg
I
and
feel
be
like
not
that's
one
why
of those
people
guys.
get them, right?
Right, because it's like fuck, I it's like riding a bike. It's like since it's like day one you ride a bike,
Yeah.
day two you go to school, kind of it's like very like natural, in that sense. But that's gonna be remaining with me, for better or for worse. Again, okay. So what's your current stable of bikes? I see you have
I've got
correct
bikes
me. You have the
strewn
trek
all
on the
across.
wall, the single speed track on the wall. Forgive me if that's
Yeah.
not a track. I can't tell from
It
here.
is a Trek. I've got a Trek single speed Superfly, and that is my joy, my single speed. I've also got a Trek Top Fuel 9.9, and that
Full suspension, right?
it is full. It was my
140
first,
millimeter.
yeah, it's my first full suspension bike, and when I was overseas, and working overtime, I just was shopping for my next bike, and I got back and I bought my dream bike, and it has been a joy to ride every day. So I love that thing. It flies, and it is. I've just had so many adventures and so much fun on that bike.
You know, the Trek demo day was today over nearby Brandywine.
Was it near Brandywine?
It was probably at Brandywine. Most likely. I saw the Facebook post. I was like super tempted to go. I was like, but I'm like, I don't have the money. I've been all these other like Trek demo days, and well, not Trek demo days, but demo days in general. I've been to them, like Scott, Cannondale, Santa Cruz. I've been to all those bikes, at least tested them out. And it's so tempting just to want to like hand them your credit card and be like, keep it.
Yeah. I totally get that.
Let's see. So, do you have any road bikes, gravel bikes?
Oh yeah. So I've got a Cannondale Super Fuel. It's the women's, or Super X. I'm sorry, it's the women's. And that one I have so much fun on. So that I'm going to be taking to unpaved this year. Also, I dabble. I've got a Specialized tarmac that
Nice.
you don't realize you don't want a road bike until you possibly can't use one. So, like in my misadventures, I nearly disabled my road bike, and I thought, oh no, how am I going to, I don't, some days you don't want to ride your gravel bike, or you don't have just don't want to do a punch and go single speed mountain bike ride. So, oh no, what am I going to do without this road bike? So I'm not a quiver of one. I'm a quiver of many. I try to have one for each thing I might need. And, when they age, I don't sell them. I just donate them. So Bicycle Coalition Youth Cycling is where many of my parts and bikes have ended up going. And I
Bike
recommend
projects.
anybody, if you have stuff sitting around, give it to those guys. Cross season's coming up. If you have anything cross laying around, now's the time to donate that.
Nah, I gotta sell that shit. I gotta make profit off that shit. Now being older, I've had bikes stolen from me, so it's just like, oh fuck, it's a great bike. But now I got a stable 3.
Mm-hmm.
I have my my Cannondale Beast of the East #1.
That's got the lefty on it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a nice bike.
Hardtail.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a hardtail.
It's
but
perfect for around here.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. But it's like, I'm thinking full suspension, but I know at the same time that's more maintenance and more costly. But I'm like, I can get something used and fuck around with that for a little bit.
I don't think full suspension is that much more maintenance. It's more maintenance going from a single speed to a geared bike than it is going from hardtail to full suspension, in my opinion. That's just one more shock to worry about.
Okay. Now I have also as well with the Cannondale, I have my Fuji Cross, which I actually use as a road bike primarily.
Yeah, a
which
lot
makes
of people do that.
which makes me think I should just sell the cross and get actually real fucking road bike. Because I've only dabbled in gravel and cross like recreationally
Uh-huh.
to the point where it doesn't make sense. Like I should have bought the road bike.
Do you enjoy long gravel rides?
I haven't even been on a fucking long gravel ride. It's been like, oh, I just go to Glasgow Park and do rounds like in the back, like maybe like 5 miles tops, like 5-10 miles tops, just to get the feeling of dirt on skinny wheels.
Yeah, because if you look in the Farmer's Almanac of Cycling, I think the forecast is that gravel is where it's going to be.
See, now here's the thing. That's true. But at the same time, I could just rock my fucking Beast of the East #1.
You could do that.
And just go ham all day and not care and not really give a fuck about the frame of me not damaging it. In my head, it's just like, I got the mountain bike. It feels kind of wrong. It feels off to me, even though I know it's right, even though I know it's the bike is built for that. But it's like when you drive it around and ride it around, road, I feel like I should have got the road bike. And I got like Shimano Tiagra. I got to change up the crankset so it's like a 50 tooth. So, I can get more out of it and more speed. But it's like, you could have got like a compact on the road bike. So it's like, man, I should just sell it.
Well, do you have road wheels on it? Like, do you have a road wheel set?
I got road tires.
Tires.
I got the factory wheels on it, and I got thick slicks on it. Yeah, they're not the grippiest. Yeah, they're heavy, but they're fucking bulletproof. If you think gator skins were tough, thick slicks are
I know
next
gator
level.
skins are tough because I've tried to put a new set on a pair of wheels.
I've done that hundreds of times. I understand. But thick slicks are just they're made by WTB, and these things are fucking bulletproof. I had only one flat. Actually, I take that back. I've only had 2 flats. Once because I was going through a construction zone downhill, going like 30 miles per hour, and I got a puncture. So that was fucking my fault. And the second one being, I think like there was like a monster fucking nail that I just happened to not see, and it went through the rear tire.
Yeah, that usually happens like a mile from the end of your ride.
Yeah, of course. But in my case, it was more like 6 miles, but that was a long time ago, so I'm probably way off. But regardless, I think thick slicks are the shit if you have a commuter. But they're really meant for a commuter bike, like just going around town. They're the shit for Philly. They are the shit for Philly. So if you live in Philly, if you need tires, I would recommend WTB thick slicks. But if you want to go with something a little bit light, go with gator skins. That's what we always recommend it to customers.
Are they just as hard to put on?
Just about.
Okay.
Just about. Now, I think they don't make a folding bead. It's only a wire bead only. So I guess it's a little bit easier, but it's like the rubber's fucking thick, as the name implies. So it's you have to fucking fight it in order to get it on the rim.
Gotcha.
So it's a bit of a struggle. Once you get it on, it's worth it. Okay, now my third bike, which I'm riding a lot, is my folding bike. It's a folding 20-inch Fuji origami, and I love that fucking thing. I sold my BMX bike because I didn't feel like getting hurt all the time on a BMX bike going to Glasgow Skate Park, trying to do 360s and not landing them and landing on my shoulder all the damn time, or just fucking myself off in general. So I was like, I'm gonna sell the BMX bike as cool as the BMX bikes was, and get the folding bike.
Now, what's the best application for the folding bike?
Okay, so what I use it for is going to Philly primarily, parking super duper far. Well, not super duper far, but like on the outskirts of town, to where I can easily find a parking spot and riding it to my destination. Primarily, that's what I use it for. Just put it in the back of the car, fold it up. It doesn't take up that much space. It's a 7-speed. I modified it so it's got like Odyssey pedals on it. It's got a all-city crankset. I kind of tricked it out. So it's my own thing. It's very much portable. It's not much maintenance at all. It's flat black, so it's very stealth.
Is it like fixed gear or is
nope,
it geared?
it's 7-speed.
Okay.
7-speed. So I like that thing very, very much. It's like it comes in handy a lot. And it's like, if you just riding through town, like, casually, you could just whip that out and be like, hey, I can ride too. I think that's very, very cool. Like, oh my God, there was times where I forgot my bike lock.
No.
And okay, here's my thing. If you forget your bike lock, right, my motto is, you can't steal what you can't see.
Okay.
And with the folding bike, that's very handy. So you can, like, fold it up and put it underneath a car or a park bench or some kind of construction zone and hide it. And nobody will know except for you. Yeah, I'm being dead fucking serious. I went to the fucking Barbary and I forgot my bike lock. And I was like, fuck, okay, what do I do now? I don't want to ride all the way back to the car. I don't want to get the Uber to the car and put it in the car. No. So there was this construction site right around the corner.
Uh-huh.
So I tucked it underneath, like, this workbench, kind of, sort of, folded it up and, like, prayed. Went in the Barbary, had a good time, had a few drinks. I forget who I was seeing. And, like, I checked up on it and it was still there. So I was, like, midway through partying. So I was like, still fucking there. Great. And when everything was said and done, it, like, 2 a.m., regardless of time, it was late. It was still there. I was able to ride my bike from the construction zone back into the car and on my way out home.
Now, is that the weirdest place you've ever stashed it?
No, I put it behind the car, but that was with my road bike. That was my big road. That was with my quote unquote road bike.
Okay.
Which is really my Fuji Cross.
Yeah.
I put that behind the car because, again, I forgot my bike lock. It was back at home, so it was like, okay, I'm gonna have to stow it somewhere where nobody can see it. And again, you can't steal what you can't see.
Yeah, but at the same time, disclaimer: don't try this at home.
This is last resort. If you have that lock, use it. If you don't, plan B. You can't steal what you can't see. You can't steal the car if you don't know where the car is or if you can't see the car. That's my theory, and it's worked for as long as you have a good spot. You can't, like, tuck it behind, like, a bush and, like, the handlebars are sticking out. You have to choose your spot carefully.
To try. Yeah, I actually had a bike stolen when I was little, but it's
we all did. We all did.
I didn't try hard enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
you
me,
gotta leave it where you can't see it.
Exactly. You can't leave it behind your back porch, which I did, and it was just like, oh, look at my bike. And then we was gonna find it. It's on your back porch, motherfucker, and there's, like, a walkway that everybody can see the shit. So it's like, it was just a matter of time. But I didn't know that at the time being young.
Same.
I'm
or,
still
like,
young,
on the
but whatever.
sidewalk when you're 11, thinking
Right.
it's the suburbs.
Somebody else wants that.
Still shady people in the suburbs.
Now, that was cool. Mountain. Okay, next question. Mountain versus cross versus road. Do you have a preference of which one? Can you choose between one or the other?
Yeah, and it changes. I will admit it changes. There was a time where I was all, like, cult cross, like, all cross, all weekend, all the time.
I always wanted to race junkyard cross.
Me too, but they don't have it anymore.
No, they don't.
Yeah, I know. Somebody will bring it back one day. But yeah, there was a time where it was all about that, and then I got deployed, and I was like, well, I like my family too, and I should probably make time to spend with them instead of feeling, my sister's wedding happens in October, and it's not all cross. It's my sister's wedding is happening, so these days I'm just completely thrilled on mountain bike. I love the woods, and that sums it up for me. Like, I just want to be outside. I like the scene. I like to have some bourbon after my ride, and I'm not going to go and do Tabata training or intervals. Like, I just don't really have that right now. So, and I won't do road because it's too scary. It's the worst.
It's the same. I don't like road, even though I have my road bike. So it's just kind of on occasion where I'm feeling confident enough. It's like, okay, I'll do some road.
I like riding on the road. I like training. I like the
It's not my first choice, though.
Yeah, like I like consistent pedaling. If it rains and the trails are bad, I'll do it. But I won't race a crit. And I'm like, I just like it's too scary.
Like, oh my God. Speaking of scary, I'm trying to think here. I'm like hitting my head on a wall. What's that? Red Hook crit.
Yeah.
Oh my God, those guys are
I don't want to go that fast and wipe out if somebody
Same.
messes up.
Same.
So.
I tried the fixed gear. I had a fixed gear bike. I had a
Mhm.
fixed gear single speed, which was also a fixed gear single speed as name implies. It was both a single speed and a fixed gear bike. You know, it was a flip flop hub, so you just flip the wheel
Yeah.
over, and it was a whatever kind of speed you wanted to be. But fixed gear, I've only tried it once. It was on my way to work at the time, and I fell over, and it was just like, fuck this shit. I'm just going to see single speed, man. I did try Trexler Town with that same bike though. And that's when I think Fixie shines.
Mhm.
When you're on a closed circuit, there's nothing around you. There's only you, the bike, and some concrete.
Oh yeah,
or,
track
like,
riding.
yeah,
and
track
you're around
riding, for
other
real.
riders that are used to that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
went up there for a try the track day
Same.
in Trexler Town.
Same.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I did it
loved
too. It was cool. It was an awesome experience. You know, trying out like island hopping and
Mhm.
being like with I forget his name, the Olympian cat.
Monty.
Was it Monty? Yeah, it was Monty. Yeah. And trying that out, that was a blast. But
Monty or Marty?
it was Marty.
Yeah.
Marty is the man. Shout out to that guy and all his crew. T-Town, shout out. But I've tried the track, and I'm like, I'm not built for fucking track. I'm 5'10". I'm fucking 120, 125. It's like, you gotta be a fucking brick house. You gotta be fucking
It's like a
quarterback.
being a power lifter versus a marathon.
Yes, very much so. It's very explosive.
Yeah.
Depending
and
on what.
also, in terms of Marty, I think there was some other things that went down. So I don't know if I necessarily.
Oh, there's other shit that went down.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to shout out him. But you know,
well, I should.
he was cool.
Thank you
he was
for
cool.
what you did on track.
He
I
was
say
cool when he was in the Olympics, I guess, representing our country. But you know, other
Yeah.
political and drama things.
Other
happen.
stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So not on board with that, but love your cycling.
Yep. It's and speaking of love my cycling. The way I'm more in tune with cycling in general, when I'm on the mountain bike, just having a good time, just just casually, is riding with music. Do you ride with music, or
I
have
don't.
you tried?
I don't, but I also didn't run with music. I just prefer my thoughts. That's my process.
For me, I ride with music, but like I have my Camelback, and I have my my cell phone and just have it on speakerphone. I have I'm not using earbuds.
Right.
So it's just like whenever it's kind of slow, that's like when I can kind of like lean my head to the right and be like, oh, like, okay,
Yeah.
does it break down? That beat like keeps you going,
Yeah.
and that's kind of like why I I go up to these events, like whatever, like a cross race or something. I just play music because like I feel like with that going into music a little bit, it kind of lets you feel like your cadence, your rhythm a bit more, and just like lets you progress.
Yeah.
Like maybe there's like a tough hill or something like that is coming, so it's like listen to music kind of amps you up, and then you eventually climb it.
Yeah.
However you do it.
I definitely feel that, and I recently read a race review from Vicky Barkley talking about, I can't remember if it was like a Rock race or TSC, but it was a first race. She was reporting it was the first race she did with headphones in. And
a race with headphones.
Yeah, she's
That's right.
And she's a super thoughtful rider. And don't get me wrong, if anything, she would be passing people, not having to listen to be passed by people. So she was saying how it really kept her in the mood. She ended up winning the race. As far as what music can do for you, the only thing I've through personal research further learned is you don't want to listen to the same song on repeat because your nerves fire, right? You get stoked up on a song, and if you listen to the same one over and over again, it kind of wears out. So having a solid playlist is a huge thing.
I would agree with that, but for me personally, it's more like the music is kind of a distraction to a degree, for better or for worse. It kind of lets you kind of not focus on what you're on the trail to a degree. So I wouldn't use it racing because I want to be focused on what my line is and what my cadence is and how much water I should drink. But outside of that, if you're not racing, if you're just going to ride with your buddies and talking shit, whatever, I feel like you just try it out and just like it kind of lets other people know that you don't really you're more carefree. And like you're kind of like like in the moment, I guess, to a degree. But you're out there just having fun.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I feel like kind of like what this all is about is just having fun and having a good time. In the end, so it's like if you put yourself out there with the music and like you and like other people here, it kind of like sets the vibe.
Yeah.
Kind of sort of the ride. It's just like just out there having fun amongst everybody else, amongst the forest, amongst nature, and amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's very cool to have that kind of feeling and have that progress. And that again, that's kind of why I put myself out there with the music at races to kind of like for you as the rider to just kind of let go for like a little bit for like a split second. And,
yeah, just before this tonight, I was talking about how at Grenoble.
Yep.
So Grenoble here in Wilmington, Delaware, where Heather Heinrich had the theme of
shout out to Jim, by the way, at Grenoble. You're the man with the fire truck. I love you.
Oh heck yeah! So they had the Stranger Things theme,
right?
With the upside down, and where you were strategically placed with the music was where at one part of the course you come under the bridge and you can hear the music.
Yep.
And it's a super technical spot. It was wet as it always is at Grenoble, and then you go through a trail section, and then you come back, and you're then above that spot on the bridge, and we could see you where you were with the music. And that, for me, was incredibly fun, understanding the theme of the race, and, like, I can hear the music, but I'm in the upside down, and then I come out, and I'm on top, and it's, like, I could see the music. That was so fun.
Thank you.
It was so fun.
I had a couple different spots. Like, finding a spot on a race course is kind of like, it's very much, I have to really think about that. Because originally I was thinking about setting up near the asphalt hill towards the end of the lap.
The last climb.
Yes, because if I were to be placed there, you can hear the music for a little while longer. Versus you zooming by me and you only hearing it for a split second. But the beauty about me setting about the bridge was you can hear it coming in and coming out. So you would hear it both times.
The other beauty is that spot under the bridge was so technical, so that the people that were walking,
I've seen it. A lot of people were walking that spot. A lot of people were walking that spot in that corner.
Yeah, if you were pushing your bike up that hill, you heard the music.
Yeah. Oh, of course. And the kids were like having fun. It was like,
and I was susceptible to that too. Like I walked my bike up that hill a couple times.
Yeah.
I did endurance. I went up that hill many a time.
Did you go up the right side, left side, or both?
I believe I stayed to the right. The first time I went through, I rode it and the line to the right worked for me. So if it works, I generally try not to change it. And then there were a couple times, like, there was a photographer there, and I'm terrible when there are people watching. So I fucked something up.
Yeah.
And then I got off the line, and I was walking my bike up probably more than I was riding it. And then it got wetter as the race went on, so it got harder to ride. And I heard your music quite a bit.
Thanks. Good. Thank you. Did you do the 5K that's like there? There was like they do the cross race and they do like the run there. Have you done both?
I have done a run there. There's a velo run there it was like a pumpkin ride that I did once. And it was at night, so it was super fun. It was a relay, and I teamed up with a rider, and I was the runner. So it's like that estate is beautiful. It's fun to ride. It's fun to run, and there are a lot of events that happen there. So
yeah, and shout out to everybody who contributes and volunteers there. Really much appreciate it. I hope that goes on into next year just as well. Grenoble is a great course, held by great people. And it puts Delaware on the map as far as, local races are concerned, whether it be running or cyclocross or mountain bike, whatever.
And it's technical trail.
It is technical. It's very much off camber. It's dry. Those cornfields in the fucking middle of summer suck the energy out of you. It's like being in the fucking oven. And I just remember when I was on the Wooden Wheels team, it's like being in that cornfield. Just it's like the most intense part.
You're
Even though
baking.
you're baking for sure. Yeah, for sure. If you were there, you would be like a hot potato, I guess, like just sitting in that heat. Um, Going more into training. Do you train for these races like to some regard? Do you have a diet? Do you have a coach or um whatever else to kind of help you out and kind of put put forth put for your best foot forward in these races?
I don't. Personally, I kind of operate better on how I feel.
Gotcha.
I have in the past worked with a coach, and I understand structure. Uh, but I also, from my running background, understand what works for me and what doesn't. And I prefer having the freedom if I sense that my body does not want to do something on a certain day. I don't want to make it do that.
Mhm.
I sign up for so many events that it kind of seems like sometimes that events keep me in shape. I do try to dedicate whatever time I have during the week to be as strategic or as wise as possible in terms of getting mileage in or, resting if necessary, coming on or off of certain events. But I just work better going by how I feel.
Same thing. I go by feel just as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now granted, I don't have the money for a power meter.
Mm-hmm.
From what I've heard, that helps a lot. Through helping customers out with power meters and stuff like that. But I feel it's just another expense, and it only really comes valuable if you're really training for a race.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, being that I rarely kind of race these days, it's just like nothing. It's just something with that one extra thing just to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
As awesome as it is, tracking your cadence and how much, power you're putting out on your right leg versus your left and whatever else.
Yeah, I don't really think there's any one best way to train. I think it really depends on the
It
rider.
really depends on the individual.
It depends on your personality. If you're a type A, type B, then it's very different. If you're a man or a woman, there are a lot of different things to think about, like in terms of like if you have hormones fluctuating and, that's something you need to think about in real time. It depends, like, you need to have a coach that thinks about those things if you choose to have a coach. Nutrition varies greatly between the two. So, I think in terms of male-female training, definitely trying to tailor things if you are on a structured plan is the way to go. But, me personally, I just kind of like to keep it open.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause this for a quick second. I want to have another beer, and then we'll continue on with this shit. I could do that with this like newfangled contraption that I have. So pause it. Okay, so I'm back. I have another beer in my hand, so we're all set and ready to go. Speaking, okay. Riding. I see the Break Epic belt buckles on the table.
It's kind of a tradition. When I get back from something super fun, I leave it out on the table.
That's rad. Maybe it'd be kind of gangster if I use that as a coaster.
I mean,
I don't want to do that, but
I mean, it's delicate. It's a buckle.
no, it's a buckle. No. How was Break Epic as a whole? You put out a bunch of different. You put out footage about it. Photos about it on Facebook. So and you wrote these like nice, elegant posts on Facebook about that, which I really appreciate. But for those who aren't really who are like lost in social media, it's easy to do that these days. How to describe Break Epic as a whole? How was that experience in general?
Oh my gosh, it was incredible.
As the name says, as the name implies, it was epic.
Yeah, the name is completely appropriate. So just a little background. So I was out in Breckenridge last year because that's where I stayed when I was just prepping for Leadville. So I did Leadville last year, Leadville 100. And while I was in town, I saw these riders going around with plates on their bikes, and my friend Cindy Copley was riding it, and just following her.
Shout out, Cindy.
Yeah, following her recaps, and Cindy's tough, and for her to say something is tough makes me think I might want to do that because I like that. I like a good challenge. So as soon as I got back from Leadville last year, I signed up. So I was signed up in August of last year to do Breck this year. And also that's when the price is lowest, so that doesn't hurt.
Yeah. Shame in that.
Yeah, exactly. So, this year coming out, I knew it would be tough because for Cindy to say it's tough, it's got to be.
That means something.
Yeah, exactly. But also I knew that Breckenridge is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. So I expected it would be tough, but it would be rewarding. So getting out there, I felt like I went out there in pretty good shape. And I was, eager enough to actually race it. Unfortunately, on the first day, we got dealt what the race director, Mike McCormack, describes as the worst or hardest, most difficult weather day that they've ever seen in the 11 years that the whole race has existed. There were more DNFs than they've ever seen, and I was one of them because I was hypothermic. So day one, I was immediately out. But at the same time, as flexible as they could be with UCI being involved this year for the first time.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. I could still be eligible for a belt buckle. So instead of riding for no reason, I could continue to ride every day with the goal of getting a belt buckle. So I couldn't race my category. Instead, I was grouped in this Grand Fondo category of people that kind of DNF'd on a day. And unfortunately for me, it was the first day. And, I figured, well, I'm out here. I'm going to ride my bike. Just because I nearly froze to death on the first day. Why throw everything else out the window? I got to share it with an awesome partner in crime. So we got back every night talking about how awesome the stage was that day. One of got past the Queen stage, Mount Guyu, which was certainly challenging. And then had Wheeler on deck, which is both a formidable but rewarding stage, and got to ride that with Levi, and that was super fun, and that was a really good moment. But as soon as we got back, we are already signed up for next year, and if that says anything,
wow.
Yeah, it's an incredible race. They are looking to take on, in terms of importance and difficulty and challenge, they've got their sights set on being on deck with Cape Epic. So it's a race that's growing and it's getting better every year. And it's the hardest thing I've ever done.
You ever thought about doing a BC bike race?
I have.
I've always thought about that.
I've been following that. I've been following posts this year about riders that, are sharing their experience in the stages. And, Canada has a lot to offer in terms of trail.
Oh, no doubt. It's almost like world renowned, just as much as their skiing is. Just as much. Do you cross train to an extent? I know you ski. I know you run. I've seen rock crawling.
I climb. Yeah.
Rock climbing. Rock crawling.
I climb. I'm not really built to rock roll as far as I conceptualize that being. I'm a little stick figure-ish. But, I do a little rock climbing. I haven't really been into it lately since we're way into mountain bike season.
Yeah, same. When and the few times that I've rock climbed, I've noticed that if you are a shorter person, I feel it's a bit of an advantage.
I think it depends.
Oh, how so?
Yeah, like if you're bouldering, which requires a lot more explosive power because it's problems that are kind of set lower to the ground, and it's usually, you're not on belay, you're not wearing a harness, you're kind of on your own power and, protecting yourself in your own way. That type of climbing, I feel like, benefits from muscles that are built for explosive power, like on a shorter person where you're more compact. But if you're looking at like lead climbing or what's trad climbing, traditional climbing, and you're doing multi-pitch routes and it's extended, sometimes it benefits you to be able to have a little bit more reach where you have options where to place your gear, or you can pick a different position where to hang your draw. Those I've seen benefit from people that are a little bit like slighter, longer, taller.
See,
Sort of
I've
thing.
only done bouldering, so that's
Yeah, that's
why.
probably why you think that
That's why I
then.
think that way for sure. And
Yep.
like yes, it's very much explosive, and
Mhm.
I always feel like if like you're nearby, like everything, like you're not too far away from this kind of like ledge,
Mhm.
kind of sort of. Whereas with the taller guys, we kind of have to like think ahead in advance to where we have to look up and be like, okay, I'm gonna make this left instead of like me just going straight up it because like I'm gonna be at an awkward angle and have to position my weight,
Mhm.
X, Y, Z in order to get up it.
Mhm.
Um, but that's the only reason why I say that because I've only done bouldering and it was like the cheaper route to go
Mhm.
versus being indoors
Mhm.
versus playing when you need a little bit more equipment, a little bit more guidance.
Yeah, but I think in terms of cost training, like that's how you gain knowledge about those things. Like, oh, this is explosive, this is dynamic, this is endurance, this is agility. Like having awareness of like what you need and where things fit in. Like I do a lot of yoga just to stretch and
I gotta get
keep
more into
moving.
that of yoga. Just I got buddies who are trainers in yoga, and I have a little bit of a curve in my back, my lower back. It's nothing big. It's just
Mhm.
like every once in a while, I like to have to rest
Mhm.
properly when the time calls for it. But it's nothing serious at all. But I feel like yoga makes you. I'm in general a very rigid person, and
Mhm.
being on the bike for so long, it just makes me that much more rigid and have like because you have to have form. I
Yeah.
feel to be on
Mhm.
the bike and be able to ride at a good cadence. So
Mhm.
being able to kind of like be more flexible,
Mhm.
I feel is key. That's something more I have to get into, and dancing sometimes helps with that.
Mhm.
Whenever I go out. But anyway, how are the trails in Colorado versus being over here on the East Coast? Like, how do they differ, and how are they the same?
They're very different. In many ways. First of all, it's not as humid over there, so it's a lot drier. Uh, Instead of worrying about washing out because things are slick, it's sometimes you got to worry about if it's too dry, holding your line. Um, it's harder to pay attention to your line because the views are incredible. But
Wow,
maybe,
look at that! Oh, there's
yeah,
that tree. Oh
exactly.
shit!
Maybe if you're right out there all the time, you get used to that. They're more protected. That's a huge thing. A lot of towns, there are taxes that are implemented in order to fund and preserve the trails. So they're much more maintained in the same. They're also more respected. So instead of having trail migration where people say, "Oh, this line sucks," let me just make my own. People aren't going to ride off the trail because there are some,
Wow.
especially when you get to certain altitudes, there are some plants that take decades to germinate. So they don't want to destruct that wildlife,
Right.
and people are more mindful about how they maintain the trails. And at the same time, they put more restrictions on riders that come out there. Or not restrictions. They
Limits,
yeah,
maybe for lack of a better
limits.
word.
They try to encourage more responsibility in terms of don't leave
Okay,
your trash.
gotcha.
Don't be disrespectful. Don't go off the trail. You know, that sort of thing. It's just a very different approach to wildlife and the environment.
Gotcha. Is trail etiquette different just as well on the West Coast, or is it kind of the same thing?
I can only speak to my own experience out there, but yeah, I feel like it's definitely more emphasized. It's there are more strict repercussions if you disobey or leave trash or jeopardize others'
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to enjoy the trail. You're going to take a lot more heat for that.
Gotcha. Could I ride the trails over in Colorado on like a wet day? Could I do that? Is that like kind of like cool, or is it like kind of like frowned upon?
I think that people are more savvy to when that is and is not okay. Uh, you probably, I feel like you wouldn't have to go to Facebook or go to a forum to know if you were somebody from out there. I mean, you know what trails drain well, you know what ones don't, you know when you should be out there and when you shouldn't. And, I've actually never been in a scenario other than day one of Breck Epic where there was a possibility that the trails were unrideable, and it actually ended up being a big thing.
Because I've been in situations where, you know, when I first got there, a couple miles in, it was A-okay. The sun was shining and everything else. But, like, as it got deeper and deeper to the right, you saw the clouds, and it eventually rained.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so magnetizing
Mm-hmm.
being out there and riding in the rain, getting back to the car and leaving.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, for that limited amount of time that you're out there in the rain, it just feels very much peaceful to a degree. It's very like euphoric.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always secretly kind of like wanted to ride in the rain, and I've done it once or twice before without nobody knowing. Just kind of like, okay, I'm just gonna do this.
Oh, well, there are
Like,
definitely
super
places
low-key.
where that's totally fine to do.
Yeah.
Like if you go down,
Like BC, well, not BC, but I mean, in Britain, that's a common thing. You ride during the rain because it's always wet.
yeah, like or if you go down to Pisgah, North Carolina, like
Oh,
it's
is
gonna
it? Yeah.
rain there, and you can keep riding. And or like if you're somewhere super rocky in Virginia, then you just keep going, and that happens. Weather's weather's different in Colorado. It passes through, and sometimes you're stuck in it, and you can't help it. So it's a lot different than it is here in the Mid-Atlantic.
Okay, so when you were in Colorado, was it tempting to toke up in Colorado? Was it like, did you go to the coffee shops? I would go to the coffee shops and be like, yo, I want some of that. Was that ever kind of like on the back of your head? It was like part of the agenda or whatever?
Well, I don't drink coffee. So.
Okay. Oh, wow. No shit. But I'm sipping this lovely beer in my right hand.
That's okay. I drink bourbon. I just,
That's rad. No, okay. No, that's good. Because,
it's not like,
I'm trying to limit my sugar intake to a degree. I'm noticing that, what's around the house, it's like, oh, I got to cut this shit out. It's like, I'm still going to have a little bit of sugar, but I'm not going to have, like, fucking, like, a monster ever again. That's, like, forget about that stuff. Or Red Bull. As much as Red Bull supports the scene, it's like, I don't want to drink one.
Yeah.
Sorry, Red Bull.
You start to question, yeah.
But it's like, I start to question that, and it's like, my cousin, Beetle, rest her soul, she died of diabetes. And when I was younger, and that was kind of, I don't want to say life-changing, but it was like, man, fuck, like, that, that could be you. Like, as doubtful as that is, it's just like a reminder that's just like, you're fortunate enough to be in this position, so just be aware of that. Again, it could be worse. That same kind of mantra, I guess this is kind of like echoing in the podcast, like, it could be worse, but it's like, hey, you're here now, so make the best of it. And what's the situation that you have. So I'm always aware of that, so I'm not having like sugary drinks all that much, and or I'm kind of like going towards like organic sugar, like real sugar, as not having all this like other crap being in my body, because like, again, I feel like your body's like a temple. You just respect it accordingly, and or let loose sometimes, but have balance.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, you either eat to live or you live to eat.
There you go. Now, going into Break Epic, day one, it was kind of like on a bad note. Hypothermia set in, so things can only get better from there. As time rolls by, let's say day 5, whatever, like, what kind of motivates you to push through despite having X amount of miles still yet to go? You're in the middle of it, there's somebody behind you, or like you're leading the pack, but it's like you gotta keep up this momentum, and it's just like, fuck, it's a grind, but it's just like, how do you manage to push through? Like, what do you think about, like, in that split second, even though you have miles to go?
Well, I didn't have the luxury of the race aspect because I was already out on day 1, so I couldn't be like, oh, I'm leading the pack, or oh, I could take over third. I didn't have any of that, so it was, how fortunate am I to be here? Like, I get to ride this stage. It was just like normal things.
Gotcha.
Like, there's so much beauty.
It was
here.
just like,
Yeah.
finish.
And then on day
That's
6, I'll be honest, I was at the start saying, I wish I were back in bed right now. You know, it was like, just got to get this done. You know, but I'm like, I've done it. I've done things like that. I've pushed past things I thought I couldn't before. I'm familiar with that. So then you get to the end. Like, I know it's worth it to get to the end because I know how rewarding it is, and I knew I hadn't done anything this hard before, but I know that things that are hard are worth it. So when you get to day 6 and nobody wants to ride their bike, but everyone still shows up, you know, it's going to be worth it. So then you get to the end, and I teared up. You know, it was really hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and to be honest, the recovery is just as hard. It takes just as much to recover.
I'll tell you what. At the end of every single race I've ever raced, it's like I've always had this thought in the back of my mind, like that could be like some dog shit at the end of the race, and it's super tempting to eat because you're like at the end of the race, you just like you'll fucking eat up the whole Old Country buffet. You'll eat the whole fucking Cracker Barrel if you could, because it's just like you put all this effort out there. You expend X amount of calories. You put X amount of time in it, and you just want to like just gorge on whatever is nearby you, and it's because you put that much effort into it, so you want to put that much effort out.
Yeah, and I feel like the next layer is
having fun and have some kind of pleasure or whatever.
Yeah, and the next layer for me is I know that everything I do, like professionally, personally, athletically, all of these things and all these challenges and all these lessons are applicable to each area. So if this may be the hardest thing I do athletically, and I get to the end of this and it's so worth it, you know, I can apply that professionally, and I can apply that, you know, with my family, and I can apply that in so many other areas, and, you know, it makes me, in my mind, a better person.
I feel the same way with my current position at my job. Like if I went through, you know, a 50-mile endurance race, you know, just putting, well, not just putting, but putting in 8 hours worth of work, you know, that's kind of like, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
You know, despite everything that's going on around you. You know, if I went through this, I can go through that. I feel very much the same way. If you can go through any kind of like situation where you're challenged, and like it's very much black and white. You know, there's a winner and there's a loser. You know, they don't give out medals, you know, you don't get a medal for participating in mountain biking. I feel it's only if you're on the podium, hey, you get rewarded. If not, you know, push on. And hopefully as long as you're having fun, you continue to do it. But if not, you have to kind of persevere forward, however that may be, through recovery. But I've always liked that about mountain biking, and again, it's gonna be like one of the reasons why I continue to pursue this, because it's like it makes everything kind of easier in that extent, whether it be work or whatever, family, whatever.
Yeah, and what makes it fun for me across the board, like these other things we've talked about, like being in Kuwait, and, you know, even when I think back to like grad school experiences and stuff, like I pull those into mountain biking too, where I'm pedaling my bike and I don't want to do it anymore. And I'm thinking, well, you know what? Would you rather be in Kuwait? And I'm thinking, no. So I can pedal through this rock garden. You know, it all applies across the board.
Any injuries did you sustain during break epic? Was it like anything other than hypothermia?
I did crash once, but that was my fault. Thought the line was the line, and it wasn't, and had to bail before I went into a ditch, even though there was a woman there graciously warning me. But it was the end of a queen stage, and you know what? Sometimes you just gotta heal up a little after that. So thankfully nothing terrible.
Gotcha. Like I've seen, well, we've always seen it. Like I think during one of the Fairhill races, I think I saw it. I saw Dirk. I saw Dirk from the Henry squad, Henry's team. Shout out to Henry's. Matt, shout out to you just as well. But I saw Dirk being pulled away on the ambulance. I think he broke his arm or something like that. It's like we see that was like this was but this was like a year or two back. I'm sure he's fine now, but it's like again, it could be worse.
Yeah.
But it was just like in the middle of it. It's like it's awesome.
Mhm.
Like to a degree, at least finishing.
Yeah.
um, now, how does cycling kind of differ from the female perspective versus being the all male field? It's very much more close. There's not as many. The field is smaller, so and everybody kind of knows each other as far as being here in the Mid Atlantic County. But how does that kind of differ from an all male field?
Well, I've never been a part of the all male field, so it's difficult for me to say exactly
No, that's
how
fine.
it
No, that's fine.
differs.
But how do you how does it how is it being amongst all the other females in your class?
Like, what are my general?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, in terms of mountain biking specifically, I feel like it's very different in terms of each discipline. Um, it's it's different because what I've personally found is it's harder for me to get what I need. Like if I need a bike that fits me or a saddle, like I don't have that in the shop that's local. So, plus I don't even know if there's one that's designed for me yet. So, it's coming along, but it's taken a little bit. And it's a process to not only, once a product is designed, make sure it's worthwhile for a shop to have it for you to try. Like it's different. Sometimes, you just have to go through a different path to get what you need. Also, we started the season and there weren't equal payouts. So that's kind of demotivating as well. But luckily, we were able to change that, at least within the Mid-Atlantic Super Series
No
this
shit.
year. And, require an equal payout based on the race structure.
That brings me back to USA Soccer, USA Women's with that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that
I shared the heck out of that.
yeah, that's rad. That's rad though. So shout out to
Yeah.
women's U.S. soccer, U.S. football in general, women's,
Yeah.
and
So
they're kicking ass, and
believe
they've
it
been
or-
doing it for a little while.
I know. They've been role models for me even since I was little, but to be honest, there probably wouldn't have been a change in the payout structure unless certain people were willing to raise a little bit of hell. And it's never fun to be the one that makes upset in the ranks. And I was specifically brought on board and as a race promoter in the Mid-Atlantic Super Series to do that this year, which upset people. There was like playground talk of why are you pissing on people's shoes, but if everybody's doing it this way now and it's a standard to have equal pay, like you need to do it. It takes a lot of energy to be the one that goes upon the firing squad to make that happen. But luckily it worked out okay. And we actually, myself and Circus Bear Productions, changed that early on. It was way sooner than we thought we would. So
It takes courage to do that.
And I've had women specifically thank me for that.
And I thank you for that.
Thank you for taking your turn on the wheel kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, it's super tiring and I'm exhausted. Like you can do so much and then you kind of have to recover, just like you do after a huge race effort.
Well, so you were part of the quote unquote council, and you would race too. Oh no shit.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought it was just you going out there racing on any given weekend.
Yeah, I'd only do the
That's
races that I wasn't promoting.
Gotcha.
Because obviously I want the best experience for the racer. But
Right, you kind of have to you have to be a host in that regard. It's again going back to DJ, like being the host, you have to look after everybody.
Exactly.
Make sure everybody's cool.
Mm-hmm.
If something goes down, you have to take care of that just as well.
Yeah.
I can go on.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I haven't played host to any kind of events yet, but from talking from people in the scene.
Yeah, but like in terms of things people wouldn't notice this year, what was different in terms of being a female racer in the Mid-Atlantic Super Series is like we brought out some women's brands. We brought out Machines for Freedom. We brought out Shredley. We brought out Terry, donated some saddles. Even Betty Designs. Like, there were women's specific companies in the swag this year, and I don't know if anyone noticed that. You know, I tried. Hopefully people appreciated that. We got equal payout. Like, it was kind of a big year now that I think about it. You know, I don't know if anyone will continue to do that as things move forward, but at least we had that, and that was different.
This brings, thankfully, if you listen to this now you know. But the crazy thing is, it's like, if everything is seamless, if you're doing your job, it's very much so that the writer and or the audience kind of is like in their own train of thought and just having like a good day in general. It's like, I just finished, Cat 2. I just finished this Cat 2 race.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to lay down and relax, eat something, kind of have a laugh, have a beer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of the way it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're a part of the council, that it's only then that you know about the statistics and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very kind of rare that those kind of lines blur.
Mm-hmm.
But being that I have this podcast, people know now, and kind of like how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's seamless, people are just in their own train of thought.
Right.
And I thank you and everybody else for doing a good job as far as playing host and making sure that these events are run properly and that everybody involved is being, I don't want to say the word governed. That seems kind of like too political, but
well, you want them to not notice things. You want, like, that's what like you said, the seamless thing. You want them to not be like, oh, where the fuck's the bathroom? Like, you want them to not
yeah.
You want them to be like, I'm hungry. What now?
Right.
You want it to be a natural process.
Yeah. You want it to be very much natural, if you're doing a good job, you know that.
Thanks.
It becomes natural.
I've personally picked up a porta potty that's been blown over in the wind the day before a
No
race.
shit. Man. I've had it. There was this, speaking of wind, there was this one event at, it was the bike line race.
Mm-hmm.
It was, again, for Wooden Wheels. We didn't have the tent, staked down.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have stakes, and it was super windy, and the tent blew over. I was like, fuck. We had to chase it down. It got damaged. It was bad. But it was cool. Okay. Do you have any role models you look up to?
I've got so many.
Okay.
Like, big and small. I tend to look more to people that I can relate to that are, maybe like, oh my gosh, Celine Yeager.
Celine, gotcha. I remember reading your articles for Bicycling Magazine, if that's still around.
Absolutely. It's absolutely around and thriving. I mean, she puts up great articles daily. Stacey Sims, which is an author she collaborated with to write an incredibly impactful book that for me called Roar, which is all about women's training and nutrition and how it differs from men. And the fact that both of them are reachable and have responded to me personally, I mean, that's incredible. But at the same time, I also have role models like my close friends like Jacqueline and Cindy and Vicky and like the people I race against. They're like, I look up to them entirely.
Yeah.
Like, it's incredible. And they're also professionals and have careers and advanced degrees. And
it's nice to have that circle, right? Like, I know DJs who are better than me, but I don't hold that against them. I don't hold that against myself.
Right.
It's just nice to know them and they know me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, man, you did this crazy 4-hour set among, like, I don't know, X amount of people at this place. Wow, that's fucking amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But you know me too? That's even more amazing.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah. When you get to collaborate and communicate and learn, I mean, that's someone that wants to help me learn. That's my role
rad.
model.
Yeah. I have too many role models just as well, Ryan Nyquist and Metal Militia. The list goes on, but I think that's you gotta have like somebody to look up to and somebody to kind of like strive for, because that kind of like molds yourself to a degree. Favorite race thus far, if you have a favorite race?
Definitely Brack Epic. The hardest, most beautiful, most rewarding, most challenging. Definitely Brack Epic.
How is it racing single speed versus something that's geared? Usually if you ride, I feel single speed, if you go back on the gear back and you whoop everybody's ass.
It's
Kind of
different for a
agree.
couple of reasons. When I'm racing my single speed, I don't rarely have a field, so I'm not usually racing anyone. There aren't a lot of women that race single speed, and if I'm racing in a men's field, I don't consider that racing because I don't have testosterone. Like, I'm not doping.
Right.
So, so I have to set a completely new expectation. There have been times where I've raced in the geared women's field. For example, the first race I did this year was Mayhem in New Jersey. And I actually ended up winning that endurance race in the geared field, but I didn't know because I missed awards. So I was just like,
Rebecca,
well,
Rebecca, could you please go to the podium? Rebecca.
yeah.
Where
And
is
I
she
had
at?
actually contacted them beforehand to see if they'd be willing to make a women's single speed field, and pretty much the answer was no. And that's like, I've done that a couple times, and usually the answer is no, which is why I try to make an effort to go to races and race my single speed where people actually offer a women's single speed category, like Keystone Off-Road, like Don Brion. Like, that's different. Like, there are women there and they're racing the field.
Right.
So I'll try and race. But it's a completely different mindset. It doesn't even, the gearing isn't really as much of a change as a factor of the like finding something to motivate me to try. Because I'm not racing. Right. It's just like, okay, this is so hard, I'll just try to get to the end. Like Stupid 50 down in Stokesville, I brought my single speed, but I wasn't racing anyone. So the motivation was, well, this really sucks right now. Let me just try and get to the end.
That's right. I can't do that. I mean,
a male,
it's a lot different. Cat 2, 19 to 29. Fuck, it's like, it's hard. It's arguably, though, it's even harder in Cat 3, because like people, like, I'm kind of like in between Cat 3, Cat 2, so it's like depending on the trail, I kind of go between Cat 3 and Cat 2 depending on the field, but it's like, dude, Cat 2 is fucking fast, even though I know Cat 1 and Pro is even faster.
But some of them are sandbaggers.
Yeah, it's very true, but I wouldn't know that at the time. Fucking sandbaggers, but fuck you. But anyway, yeah, it's a hard field, but I can, there's never going to be a race where there's going to be a group of 3 in my field. I wish, but it would be kind of hollow as a victory. But it's one of the reasons why I'm not really racing is because, like, I never had, in general, a family member at a race. I always felt kind of hollow, like I put all this time and effort into the race. Not granted, my team's there and they support me. I thank them for that. But it was always very hard to for them, family-wise, for them not recognize that at all.
Yep.
That's very hollow. And I always felt that in a race, and that's why I'm not really. That's one of the reasons why I'm not really racing.
Yep, I totally get that.
Let's see. We're going towards the end of our questions here, so I'm just gonna kind of like, I don't want to say rapid fire, but we're just gonna go throw it. You've been to Snowshoe, right?
Yeah.
Have you skied there?
I haven't.
Okay. I ski, but it's primarily alpine. I want to get more cross country though. There's not too many cross country spots other than Fair Hill.
I prefer cross country.
I want to try it. I want to try it.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed skiing a lot more when I was doing like a backcountry approach to an ice climbing route or something like that. I like being off the groomed trails.
Okay, gotcha. I've always wanted to try that. But you've ridden Snowshoe on a bike. And you were at the bike park. Do you prefer downhill, or do you prefer riding your full suspension top fuel? I would assume if you were there. Do you prefer one or the other?
Well, that's the bike I brought, so.
Oh, okay. Wasn't enough.
You gotta ride
wasn't enough though.
It was enough. The top fuel was enough, and I have also ridden it downhill at Breckenridge, and it was enough on the ski lift trails.
You see, I've contemplated riding Blue Mountain on my hardtail, and it was like,
I don't know.
I talked to Chris. Yeah, same thing. That was the same.
Sketch.
That was the same response I got from Chris. It was like, it's kind of sketch.
It's really
needs to travel.
wet.
Maybe like green trail the whole time.
Yeah. So it was enough for what I was riding, but if I wanted to take on anything more difficult in terms of what I rode when I was there, then I would need more travel, different geometry.
Okay, top 5 trails. Yeah, if there's top 5 or top 3 or what is do you have a favorite trail?
Anything I rode at Breck Epic for sure.
Boom. Easy enough.
Anything I rode at TSC for sure. Specifically, I mean Wheeler was awesome.
Okay.
Mhm.
I can only imagine.
Oh my gosh. I had tequila at the top. It was great.
um, this is becoming a question more and more throughout the podcast because I'm in almost time. I gotta go to travel in Philadelphia, and almost every week I'm in Philadelphia for a party or I have to DJ somewhere or, I want to meet somebody or go someplace. And from everybody who's I've been with in Philadelphia, they'll always have tattoos. And I'm thinking about getting a tattoo myself someday. I should say in the near future. But I know you have tattoos.
One or two.
Yeah. Explain yours. Do you have like a favorite? Is there like a story? Well, there's always stories, I feel, with tattoos.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think
Like,
anybody
yeah.
gets something permanent without a reason.
Right.
But yeah, all mine kind of like throughout my life have had something. One of them was my first ultra marathon. One of them was my first marathon. Another one was when I got back from Kuwait. Another one was when I survived my PhD. Like they all have some meaning. They might not look like it, but yeah, they all were some integral part of my life.
Yeah, same. I've always wanted same thing. I've always feel like it's kind of like a monumental kind of thing. It's like, oh, I've done this. I should get that.
Yeah.
Kind of like it's a reminder, kind of sorta. But I always feel with tattoos, it's like I always wanted to share the experience of somebody with somebody of the tattoo, because it's like, it's becoming so common these days that it's like, it's just like it's like very much blasé, for lack of a better. It's very much like it's like it's part of you to the extent that where I don't recognize it. It's going back to you can't steal what you can't see.
Yeah.
Kind of sort. It's like it's right in front of you, but you don't see it. It's like finding your pen, but it's in your pocket. It's like right there the whole time. You just don't see it because it's so common. That's kind of the same vibe I get. But I always kind of wanted to throw that out there as far as tattoos.
No, I get that. Like when I run into somebody else, I don't always like see or notice. Like I notice that they have tattoos, but I don't really see what it is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's like you don't know like the depth behind it.
Yeah, unless I know that, I get to know them, and then I ask them why that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you play guitar.
I do.
You play guitar. How did that come about?
I just got bored one day. I started on the piano, and then in third grade, they were like, "What instrument do you want to play?" And then they brought out all these instruments, and then I was like, "Well, the clarinet looks like the hardest because it has the most keys." So I picked that. So then I started playing the clarinet, and then I picked up the flute, and then I taught music lessons and thought the guitar would be nice because I could entertain people. And so it's just kind of like music is always a part of my life.
It's now I don't want to say integral, but it's now a part of my life. And little synopsis here. I've said this before, and I'll say it again on this podcast. I was first going out and just trying to find myself within the neighborhood, like around 13th Street, and going out to like Eye Candy and Voyeur and Woody's, and a lot of DJs there play like EDM kind of stuff, like poppy kind of stuff. Like Calvin Harris and Diplo and Martin Solveig. All those names. But I would get tired of that kind of sorta. It kind of like you still hear that from time to time. But I was like, there's got to be something more to this. And I've known those artists for having more tracks than just having more tracks than what you primarily hear from those DJs having rotation. So I was like, man, I gotta be a DJ and put this shit out there. There's more to it than just what top 40. There's also techno, there's also house, there's drum and bass, but you don't often hear them around here. But thankfully, nowadays, Philadelphia is progressing as it always kind of has, and you're hearing that sound. And coming from overseas, but techno's American. It started in Detroit. And you can say house is American, Chicago house or Philly house. Well, I consider a house to be Chicago and disco to be more Philly. But that's, you learn that shit. And it's like, listening to Calvin Harris or whomever, all due respect, you're not going to hear it from them all that often. So it's just, again, if you travel, if you're a world traveler like me, you are, you get to learn, you have an ear for that. And I would imagine with the guitar, it's kind of the same thing. You may play a chord or a key that's not really heard. That's like, oh man, that I haven't really heard that before, or I haven't really played that before.
Like a
So I
chord
want to explore.
progression,
Yeah, exactly. And you just want to progress and do that just as well. If I'm plaque, I try to play trombone. I was
Awesome.
back in 4th grade, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I gave it up, and I don't even know now.
And you're like, I'm not all
DJs.
about the spit valve.
I just want to scratch. I don't want to. I don't want to play the horn all day. Okay, what sport have you done that you wish to explore if you had the time and money to do it?
I feel like that'll dictate itself as my options are limited.
Okay.
Like if I only have the option of CrossFit, then I'll do that.
Okay. Cool. Any shout outs, promos, any events you're gonna do, or anything else that you were coming towards the end now? So we are at the end. So
We're coming toward the end of this year. I'll definitely be at Unpaved and Iron Cross, but as for next year, it's a blank slate.
okay. Cool. I think we're gonna leave it off there. Yeah, we'll just end it off there. This is episode 11, Xclude with Rebecca. Rebecca, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you for spending time with me. I think we just have to do the photo and the wrap up. What kind of music do you like, by chance? I'm gonna try to throw that in there.
Cliche, I like it all. I've got country, rap, pop, alt, dance, trance, everything on my series.
All right, cool. I'll throw in probably a rap track or something like that in the beginning or the end, and then I'll throw in a little techno, whatever. Yeah, I guess we'll just end it off there. Thank you for listening. Again, like, share, subscribe, all that good shit you know what to do for those listening. This is episode 11. Coming to a close. Thank you so much. Later.
Call all the ladies out, they're in their finery. 100 jewels on throats, 100 jewels between teeth. Now bring my boys in, their skin in craters like the moon. The moon we love like a brother, while he glows through the room. Dancing around the lies we tell, dancing around big eyes as well. Even the comatose, they don't dance and tell. We live in cities, you'll